One of the most mysterious and astonishing sites from our lost ancient unknown past is a site that is hardly ever talked about and in fact is a place that most people aren't even aware exists. The incredibly massive, deep underground city of Derinkuyu, located in the Cappadocia region of central modern-day Turkey and within the historic lands of ancient Anatolia, is among the most astonishing ancient wonders of the world, and which takes most people by complete surprise the first time they learn of it, as few are aware that a gigantic, subterranean, doomsday bunker-like city extends a staggering 18 levels deep into the earth, penetrating a remarkable depth of some 280 feet or 85 meters, creating a labyrinth of miles of endless tunnels that connect to hundreds of rooms which supported, get this, more than 20,000 people plus livestock. Here is an animated map which, although not drawn to scale, and it also only annotates 9 of the 18 total levels, however, it does greatly illustrate the nature and design of this incredible marvel of ingenuity and geoengineering. But perhaps the only thing more bizarre than an ancient 20,000 person deep underground city is the bizarre fact that we do not know who created it, how, or even when. In fact, why it was built and for what intended purpose is also hotly debated, making this incredible site among the most mysterious surviving remnants of a lost ancient civilization on Earth. And having had the incredible opportunity to travel to Turkey and visit this site in person earlier this year, I have to say that it was one of the more mind-boggling experiences I've had in my life while visiting ancient sites. In fact, it further validated my belief in the possibility that a great lost civilization with advanced knowledge and sophistication went to profound extent to survive an ancient cataclysm of some kind, and at some point in our distant past, as I'll elaborate on later in this video. But first, there are so many truly astonishing details about this enigmatic site that I'm going to share with you in this video, it's hard to even know where to begin. So first and foremost, when I said a moment ago that this site is massive, well, aside from the mind-blowing fact that it extends 18 stories and 280 feet deep into the earth, the city itself covers an area of 4 square kilometers, equivalent to 1.5 square miles. All of which is hidden beneath the surface of the modern-day city of Derinkuyu, which, by the way, the name translates to deep well in Turkish, related to the discovery of this city and the fascinating system of deep water wells and sophisticated air ventilation shafts within this metropolis, which I'll share more about in a moment. But the phrase hidden beneath the surface is all too true when we consider the amazing fact as to how this lost underground city was rediscovered in modern times. As the story goes, back in 1963, a man was conducting renovations to his home and discovered this ancient underground city by total accident while sledgehammering his way through his basement wall, only to feel a draft of cold air flowing its way through the hole his sledgehammer had just went through. For centuries, tens of thousands of people unknowingly lived on top of this subterranean city while having no idea of the historic marvel that lay hidden hundreds of feet beneath their feet. And that is where this mystery becomes even more interesting, as the discovery of this one underground city led to something that nobody expected. While exploring the staggering 4 miles or 6.5 kilometers of tunnels within Derinkuyu, they discovered a certain passageway located at the 3rd level down, approximately 20 to 30 feet under the surface, which took explorers on an epic journey through a seemingly never-ending tunnel which led them 9 kilometers or more than 5.5 miles, which eventually led to an entirely other underground city which itself supported thousands of people on its own, which we now know as the underground city of Cataclysmic. That's right, 5.5 mile long man-made subterranean tunnel connects these 2 massive underground cities together. But unfortunately, that tunnel was sealed years ago with a concrete wall, along with many other tunnels throughout Derinkuyu as we see today. And unfortunately, there do not appear to be any photos of this tunnel that have ever been made available to the public by the authorities that control this site. But from what I understand, it is located on the 3rd level and was wide and tall enough for 3 to 4 people to walk side by side through it. I have to say that it is a complete and total shame that has never been shown to the public, at least from what I could find. And with that said, I just can't get over it. A 5.5-mile long tunnel, 20 to 30 feet under the earth, is nothing short of astonishing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's longer than modern cartel drug running tunnels. Hell, let's go check. Well, it turns out that it is. In fact, this ancient underground tunnel is nearly 7 times longer than the largest known cartel tunnel. Amazing, but I digress, and circling back to Cataclysmic, it's worth mentioning that it is also massive yet much smaller than Derinkuyu, as it extends 8 levels down compared to 18 levels respectively, yet it still housed an estimated 3,000 to 3,500 people, with some sources claiming a capacity as high as 5,000 to 6,000 people. That in itself is truly extraordinary. And in other words, these two connected cities could facilitate a safe haven for approximately 25,000 people plus livestock. And not only that, the discovery of these two cities led to further exploration of underground cities in the region of Cappadocia, where they now believe that as many as 200 smaller, separate underground cities potentially exist, with at least 40 of them being at least 3 levels deep or more, and many of which are also said to connect directly to Derinkuyu through various subterranean tunnels. Wait a second, there's as many as 200 ancient underground cities in this one region alone? What on earth would make virtually an entire civilization construct hundreds of these bunker-like cities? And by the way, which just so happen to be in the same exact geographical region of the mysterious ultra-ancient Tas-Templar civilization sites that make up Göbekli Tepe and several dozen others, which date back more than 11,600 years, which, as I've shared many times before, just so happens to be at the same exact period of time of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. No, I do not think that it is a coincidence that these mysterious primeval sites were all buried at the same period of time, and in the same region of these hundreds of underground cities. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we don't even know when Derinkuyu was built. Stone, of course, cannot be dated, and the earliest dating of relics and artifacts recovered from within this labyrinth date back closer to 3,000 years ago. Academics suggest it may have been initially built by the Phrygians in the 8th century BC, some 2,900 years ago, but here's the thing. There's enormous amounts of evidence that this site was reused many times by different people over multiple millennia. For example, artifacts have been found from the Middle Byzantine periods dating between around 1,600 years ago, as well as artifacts related to the Arab-Byzantine Wars from some 1,200 years ago. And artifacts have also been found suggesting the site was used as refuge from the Mongolian incursions some 700 years ago. And even more artifacts have been found showing that Christians used the city as refuge from Turkish Muslim rulers during the Ottoman conquest hundreds of years later. And these are just a few established examples. Who knows how many times Derinkuyu was used the spans of time in between, and perhaps long before. So although the oldest dating of this city is approximately 3,000 years ago, it's entirely possible and even likely that any artifacts proving that it's older would have been erased by those who used it throughout the millennia that followed. It is simply a matter of fact that we do not know exactly who built this, when, why, or even how. So as far as I'm concerned, an argument could be made that this site qualifies as prehistoric as its origin is entirely undocumented. But when we consider the tremendous sophistication that went into constructing this massive city, a valid argument could be made that it exceeds the engineering know-how of ancient civilizations at that time, at least based on what we were taught in school. I mean, the very fact that this lost underground city wasn't even supposed to exist in the first place should really make more people reflect on just how little we truly know about our ancient past and the capabilities and sophistication we continue to discover throughout the world that is rewriting our history books. A great example of this at Derinkuyu is the incredible fact that there is no evidence of any cave-ins throughout the 18 levels that make up this city, meaning that whoever built this knew precisely where to carve out tunnels and various structural support columns to ensure the integrity of the complex. And again, the fact that they did so without any catastrophic cave-ins is tangible evidence of the sophisticated engineering knowledge they somehow possessed thousands of years ago. Another example of their skilled sophistication involves the construction of 52 large air ventilation shafts, which extend as much as 180 feet or 55 meters deep into the city, which could also be used for communications between different floor levels. And although these pictures are incredible, they do not do justice for the feeling of awe you have when you see it with your own eyes. And if that's not incredible enough, consider that there are approximately 15,000 additional smaller shafts, most about 10 centimeters wide or 4 inches, which provided air circulation to the hundreds of interconnected rooms and tunnels throughout this city. In fact, I could feel the draft of air while down at the 8th level, which I should mention is the deepest level they will let anyone go today, as the 10 other levels that extend to the 18th are off limits to visitors and have been quite literally sealed off with concrete walls and locked gates throughout the city. But here's what's wild. Although the upper 8 of the 18 total levels are open, those first 8 levels alone only account for approximately 10% of the entire city. In other words, the lower levels are significantly larger than the first 8, and somewhere around 90 to 85% of the site has been unseen by anyone for decades. I have to say that it is a total bummer that these lower levels are unavailable to the public. The least they could do is have Turkey's Ministry of Antiquities department go in and video record it for all the world to see. I cannot begin to tell you how mind-blowing it was to have spent hours exploring the first 8 levels and then realizing that I only saw a fraction of the total structure, which again housed more than 20,000 people, enough to fill most modern-day sports arenas. Think about that. It'd be like having everyone in attendance within Madison Square Garden and go live in this one underground city and with room to spare. Unreal. What I wouldn't do to go and venture further down into the 10 other levels that extend into the deepest depths of this site, but they claim that it's too dangerous for visitors to go into, which I sort of find odd considering that they've also stated how impressive the site is to have had no cave-ins on any of the levels. I mean, aside from bumping your head or rolling your ankle, this subterranean labyrinth might actually be among the safest places on Earth, as it could serve as a literal fallout shelter from nearly every natural disaster imaginable, or even a war. And the very fact that it could support as many people as it did, plus livestock, is a massively important detail that should make everyone question why they would have gone to such unbelievably profound extent to seek refuge deep inside the Earth. But if all of that wasn't already interesting enough, wait until you hear this. When I mentioned that advanced knowledge and sophistication went into creating this underground city, you should know that at the deepest level, 18 stories down, it reached an underground river or stream which supplied its tens of thousands of inhabitants with not only water, but a possible method of disposing waste, ensuring the capability to live here for extended periods of time. They had water, air shafts, and countless rooms for storage of large amounts of food. But how did they know to dig directly over that one water source? Did they get lucky? I doubt it. I mean, it's one thing to dig a water well next to your home, as humans have done for thousands of years, but it's something else entirely to orchestrate and plan the construction of a 280 feet deep, multi-level subterranean complex directly over a limitless source of water. I just wish the deepest levels were open today so we could all see what it looks like. But speaking of the 18 levels this city consists of, another truly interesting aspect of this city is that each individual level was capable of being sealed off with 1,000-pound rolling stone doors, which locked every level from within, allowing each individual floor to be capable of being closed off separately. This is of course what led archaeologists and historians to conclude that the purpose of this city was ultimately to escape invaders. And to be fair, it certainly was used for that purpose as I mentioned earlier. However, I have serious doubts that this massive city was originally constructed for the purpose of hiding from an invading army. The amount of time to plan, map out engineering, procure tools, and all the various logistics required to complete this profound project, and not to mention physically digging out the site itself, would undoubtedly be an enormous and lengthy undertaking. Like I always say, look and think for yourself. Does that really make any sense? They proceeded to dig a whopping 20,000 person underground doomsday city once realizing they were being invaded or were going to be. And not to mention the important detail that this city connects to another underground city 5.5 miles away that could support a few thousand people on its own, and then combined with the estimation that there are some 200 total underground cities in the region, which altogether could support, I don't know, perhaps in the realm of hundreds of thousands of people in total. I would love to see an estimate on that. But something else notable to mention is that one city of Derinkuyu itself had an estimated, and honestly astonishing, 600 individual entrances, most of which are hidden and scattered throughout the surrounding area and even beneath people's homes today, which means that people had the ability to quickly descend and go into this labyrinth, which screams of haste and dire urgency. I'd say that having 600 entrances would make it far more likely that invaders would quickly discover their hiding place and attempt to smoke them out or seal them in and starve them out. Obviously, we could endlessly debate the pros and cons of digging out an underground city to hide from invaders, and leave a comment and share what your thoughts are on that. But I will say that the sheer fact that millions of cubic feet of earth were removed from these cities is an undertaking so massive that we should seriously consider that it may have been built to survive something else entirely. And although it's difficult to find an actual figure for just how much earth was dug out to create this massive complex, I did find that author and researcher Andrew Collins had calculated that more than 5 million cubic feet of rock was removed from Derinkuyu alone, which is equivalent to more than 370 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And this leads me to something exceptionally interesting to consider, which is that the debris that was removed was never actually found, yet remnants of 5 million cubic feet of earth would have created a large hill, just as we see as a result of construction projects and mining operations today. And not only that, if they had chosen to spread out the vast amounts of volcanic tuff throughout their land, which, by the way, volcanic tuff is the type of bedrock that Derinkuyu is made up of, would have ultimately ruined their already fertile soil, subsequently crashing their own agriculture in the area as a result. Which is why it's been suggested by some researchers that they may have chosen to dump the remains in a nearby river, which would have carried the sediment away over time, and hence why we haven't found the 5 million cubic feet of dirt, stone, and rubble they removed. And this is where it gets very interesting, as this potential dumping ground along the river has been found to contain tools and artifacts dating back to the Paleolithic period, which ended 11,600 years ago. Is it possible that the tools they found are related to Derinkuyu? I'd say that anything is possible, as this area along the river has never had an actual archaeological excavation. So although nothing is certain and it may have no connection at all, this is clearly worthy of further archaeological study and research to establish what they did with all that debris. Because if there was evidence which proved that Derinkuyu was created at the time of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe of 11,600 years ago, that in itself would rewrite the history books forever, as it would prove that humans had advanced knowledge of the pending cataclysm and went to profound extent to dig 200 underground cities to survive it. And let's not forget that Göbekli Tepe was buried approximately 11,600 years ago, and recent scientific studies have suggested that it's the world's oldest lunar solar calendar, which may have documented an earlier ancient disaster and potentially holds a calculated warning to future generations of when the next cataclysm will occur. Which is all the more reason why they need to fully excavate Göbekli Tepe, and why I must continue to bring attention to the fact that as of today, they have no plan to fully excavate it in any of our lifetimes, which is sheer archaeological insanity if you ask me. And I would also call for further study of Derinkuyu and gather samples and test for additional dating on all 18 levels, including in the deepest, which again are now closed off and haven't been affected by decades of tourism. What I do know is that regardless of just how old Derinkuyu may ultimately be, it is a true lost ancient enigma and should honestly be placed among the ranks of all the other ancient wonders of the world. And what I will say is that having been inside it for a few hours, I can tell you that I could not imagine even spending one night in there. Seriously, it would be a nightmare to live in this cold, dark, hard environment and with no sun. My overall sense while touring this city is that it represents ancient trauma, that whoever took refuge here, regardless of whatever the reasons may have been, its inhabitants would have done so out of sheer fear and desperation. I honestly would rather run and hide in the mountains and endure snowstorms than live inside this place. And that is just another reason why I question as to whether this was originally created as a doomsday fallout bunker. And by the way, when I said that this place is cold, it maintains a temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius all year round. It's so cold I could see my breath. But I suppose it would be far better to be inside this underground city than outside if the sky was on fire from a cosmic impact or some massive solar event, or perhaps from a geomagnetic pole shift. Leave a comment and share your thoughts on everything I've shared in this video. Why do you think Derinkuyu was created and when? And I really hope that you liked the photos I shared. I took more than 400 photos within Derinkuyu, so it was a project just editing this together to find the best ones, and it's a lot of fun. But I will say that the photos themselves do not do justice for the gravity of this site, that nothing is truly the same as what you see and feel in person. With that said, I'll close it up here. My name is Jimmy Corsetti, my channel is called Bright Insight, and my long hiatus for making videos is over, and I'm excited to share that I'll have another one out in the next few weeks. That said, hit the like button and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you all again real soon. Take care, everybody.